Eh bien, merci d'être avec nous.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being in Lille this morning with Anne-Gaëlle Baudouin, who will stay with us. We're happy to welcome Romain Santini. Thank you for joining us. Romain, you're the CEO of the ID program within DocaPost. Olivier, merci. Olivier, thank you for being with us. You're head of EUDI within BNP Paribas. Anne-Gaëlle, still with us. Claire Levallois-Barthes from the IMT in Nantes, associated professor, expert in ID and law. And we also have Marianne Nekeli, thank you for joining us, project leader for the General Directorate for Companies within the Ministry of Economy and Finance. Madam Prefect, let's start with you again. And just to come back to what you mentioned in your introduction, Guy de Felcourt told us that we now have services, attributes, under several forms. What are they and what are the different ways to manage the citizen identity digitally? Well, to launch the topic, once again, we are really looking at achieving consistency within the missions that are those of the Ministry of the Interior and more specifically of France Titre. Our mission, our mandate is to deliver titles, whether driving licenses or ID cards. We really have to commit to digitalization of documents. Of course, we have to bear in mind the need to keep alive the whole ecosystem that guarantees the security of the documents, the genuinity of the documents, really relying on the different civil servants in charge of those documents in local municipalities. But also, we have to put in place services that will facilitate the access to those services to all users. And we also hope in the way to save money, because that's another important concern of our government. So we're really taking this turning point of digitalization of documents. This is something that we started doing with the driving license, and now we're speeding up the process. We're multiplying the number of documents. Of course, with an increasing number of documents, we see rising questions regarding the digitalizations, legal issues. How do we decide the frame into which the documents are made secure from a legal point of view? What is their legal value? We think there are changes to put in place in our legislation regarding the legal validity. And I think these are points that will be talked about in Parliament very soon. So legal issues, technical issues, but also rollout, maybe schedule and user experience. So we'll come back to the implementation and to the debates to take place in the Senate soon. Marie-Liane, just a word with you on companies. What is it changing? What is the European ID wallet changing for companies, French companies and European companies? Madam Prefect has touched upon the topic already. We're really working on a quite old vision of streamlining our red tape, changing the relationship of citizens with the administration, but also changing the relationships of companies with the administration, streamlining their operations, and also helping companies have an easier access to one another, maybe share documents more easily with ID confirmation. Also working on the level of authorization for document share and data share. What about those new functions that will be brought about by the wallet for companies, for legal entities? What's the situation in 2025? Well, we think the wallet will really be a game changer for companies, for legal entities. It's already used. Through France Connect Plus, you can have a single shop for companies relying on the current ID, digital identity, whether La Poste or France Connect. And this is now a significant share of transactions done within France Connect Plus. We also know that for a number of years, companies have had to make sure that they can have an authentication of digital signature. And this is something that is now coming. It's in the pipeline, and it's going to secure the use of digital signature for companies. And from 2030, if I'm not mistaken now, we will need 2 levels of authentication on existing platforms. This is what we have in place or coming out. And we see that different companies have different needs and hence different functionalities. So tomorrow, to have a wallet where you can secure your identity as a CEO and sign will solve a large number of issues. What else can the wallet bring? Well, the wallet will multiply the number of certifications. I think there's a specific roundtable panel on that. But what the wallet will make possible is to say, I'm a CEO, I work for Doca Post, I have power of attorney for a given company, and this can be recognized digitally at the European level. This is completely missing today and totally impeding transactions between companies or between companies and governments. And just to end on that small introduction on company ID, it's a subject that the EU Commission is looking at, because in their 25-27 working program, they have a point on streamlining B2G and B2C transactions. Olivier, let me turn to you now. What about the impact? What about the consequences of this digital wallet for citizens? I'm thinking about payment, because you represent the banking sector as well. Yes, of course, citizens have to be at the core of the evolution. We're doing all this work on digital ID to simplify the daily life of our citizens, and above and beyond all the companies that are trying to sell services. I think the 2 buzzwords are simplifying and securing. Simplification, because when you personally have to authenticate, to provide a justificating document, to sign digitally a document, you have a wealth of applications, a wealth of proprietary solutions that are more or less harmonized, but less often harmonized than not. So it's always really full of hurdles for the citizens in their daily lives, in their digital daily lives. And security, because the easy digital solutions are not necessarily the most secure. They're not necessarily legally justified. So we need to have a level of warranty for daily operations, a level of certification to help the user throughout their digital lives. So simplifying, securing. You've talked about security, safety. We know that we talk a lot about data security, citizen security. We all subject to multiple attacks, cyber attacks that are really part of our lives now. So we have to be particularly vigilant, but sometimes we don't have the know-how. So there's a clear impact on people who provide identity. They have to ensure the data security and the general security of users. Yes, ID providers have to be in a position where they can justify the identity of a given person when you need to verify the identity for a given service. But you also need to accept aliases or pseudos. You can have several identities pertaining to one individual. And if we do that, not just at the national level, but at the European level, we have to ensure that those systems are interoperable. So we see why we've entered into the SVDO process. This has led us to change the way we work within the EU regulations, not just saying this is what you need to do, but also this is how you need to do it in a secure manner. It's the only way we can get to something that is usable for the citizens. And to finish on payment, credit cards, there are international standards that have been imposed to everyone, whatever your specific bank. This is something that we need to widen, and it has to be as easy to use your European ID as withdrawing cash from an ATM. Romain, maybe a word on the potential impact on ID providers in terms of data security? Yes. To start with, the IDIAS 2 directive is really pushing for a European verification of ID wallets, but we didn't wait for IDIAS 2 to come up with secured solutions that respect privacy. We've always been very demanding in France with the ANSI. We've always been looking at certification, reliability of services, but we've also always, as service providers, we have to keep up to date with digital threats. We've seen in France the scandal about the training account, which has really been a learning curve for the ecosystem as a whole. So we now have, generally speaking, services that are secured services, secured buildings. This is already in place. We're not going to create that with the wallet. It's already in place. Now, what is changing with the wallet is this desire to have a European-wide harmonization of what is required from ID providers. This is the work done by EMISA that we are taking part in. We have to make sure that requirements are understood and applied in a similar manner in the 27 countries in the EU. Claire? Yes, we have the safety security aspect of those ID wallets, but also we have privacy. This is really important to ensure that people will trust the wallet. We need to fully respect our GPD.
Parfois, mais pas suffisamment, à mon goût.
It's a point that we talk about, but not sufficiently. I think we've had numerous debates, particularly when we decided to implement the different directives by the EU Commission. It's quite complicated because it has to go down, cascade down the whole ecosystem to the ID providers, digital signature, digital payment. Everybody will be impacted within the ecosystem. We have to comply with the directive, and we have to start with an impact assessment, with a risk assessment. We have to put in place selective disclosure, proof of identity, etc. And that's not easy to do. And if it has to be done at every single level, it's a massive amount of work. Marianne, a word on the security, safety aspect, data security. We're talking about companies. We see the amount, we see the rising number of cyber attacks targeting companies. When we see the cost globally, nationally represented by cyber criminality, we see that a lot of effort has to be done on the security of digital identity. Yes, of course, we have to keep full control over data. When we see the state of the art of the threats, we see that phishing now is very, very high in terms of cyber attack or cyber threat. Claire also mentioned the fact that users in their private lives have to be totally in control of their personal data, which is why we have very high expectations from ID providers. The user has to be able to use the data necessary and only the data necessary. We've all been faced with forms where we have to give information that we don't quite see the point of. With the ID wallet, the forms will only ask for the necessary information. Whatever you give out that is personal has to be for a given purpose. So that's why we have all this work on security. It's not just the minimum necessary, but the first question is, are you 18 or more? And this is really a main progress with the EUDI Wallet. Anne-Gaëlle Baudouin, regarding current discussions within the French Senate, I think there's one amendment that could really change the distribution of attributes. I'm not going to ask you to talk about what's going on in the Senate. I know it's not your role or function as a prefect. But on this question of the attributes, what are the points that need to be discussed? What potential incidents? Depending on the decision taken by the Senate. Yes, it's a sensitive question in my position. Yes, an amendment was filed by the government aiming at giving legal value to the certifications and products, generally speaking, of high-level providers, and more specifically France Identity. Really, this amendment is a way to answer a number of questions that have been put to MPs. A lot of service providers have asked questions about the legal value, the legitimacy of a certificate given out by France Identité, for example. Now, the existing global framework is to say, and I see the representatives of DLPLJ in the room, so I speak under their control, but the underlying principle is that you can use any mean to prove your identity. This is the wording of the legislation, and it is then beyond the general principle. It is for the different entities to decide whether a given document is receivable or whether a given product, such as France Identity, is deemed reliable or not. And this is what happened when a few weeks back the French train line SNCF accepted France Identity as a proof of identity. SNCF did it in line with their own principles and rules. Now, I didn't dare this morning check. FIC, do you accept France Identity? Yes. Well done. Congratulations. We didn't really dare to check that this morning. So that's the underlying principle in the legislation. You have to prove your identity by any means available, and then the different sectors or providers have to decide on what is acceptable. We thought it was wise in order to speed up the implementation, to have a principle in the legislation, black on white. So, honestly speaking, we're hoping to see the adoption of the amendment by the Senate. We hope that it will be declared receivable. I mean, obviously, everybody knows that the political situation was for us a way to push forward the electronic vote. It's less true now that we're back to the normal legislative process. We all know what is the current political situation in France, but we've used it as a way to speed up the adoption. Claire Levallois, maybe a word of explanation on the legal recognition of the attributes in the wallet. Yes, I'm a professor, researcher, legal. We have this directive, IDS 2, at the level of the EU, recognizing those attributes, qualified and considered equal to a paper document, but we had to transfer that into the legislation. We had to provide a clarification, and those identities delivered by the NTS, they will provide a digital certification of attribute, and then those certifications will have to be recognized. This is what we have in the amendment. They will have to be recognized by the different public services. This is really to try and fight cyber attacks, that you no longer have to send an email to prove your identity. What seems important to mention is that France Identité is a choice of users. I really was quite in awe of the service you put in place. When I went to my local municipality to ask for a new ID for my husband, I really saw that it was fast and efficient. So I really wanted to congratulate you. And I think it's important when something is well done to say it, not complain all the time. But it has to be the free will of the user. This has to be borne in mind. And also, there are many people who would like to use it, but think about elderly people. I think about my parents. They're in their 80s. It's difficult for them to adopt digital operations. Yes, go and have a look on our LinkedIn. We were so proud to receive a letter from a user aged 81 who really enjoyed using France Identité. Now, above the anecdote, I am convinced that particularly for vulnerable publics, people far away from digital, and it's not just a question of age, but I think the ID card is a simple document, and the fact that you can have an easy, streamlined way to get an ID, to do away with passwords, verification, SMS, textos, to have something easy and streamlined is really good for vulnerable publics as well. I mean, we really have this belief that it's something that will facilitate the uptake. And we were talking about RGPD, but in terms of data security, data dissemination, there's another design that we have, something that we want to promote. We want to be quite clear about the specific use of a given document. For example, I think we have to do away with photocopying ID cards, because this is just feeding criminal networks with false identity documents. So we really have to clearly define what for, when, how, when can a certificate be used. This is particularly important, and it will be reassuring and taking in account the needs of our citizens. Let's come back to this very important notion of inclusion and uptake. It's important nationally, but it's also important with the coming of age of the European ID wallet, digital wallet. It has to be an inclusive process. Olivier, maybe you wanted to say a word on the legal recognition of certified attributes. Did you want to add to what's already been said? Yes, not just on attributes. The whole solution of this European wallet, France Identité in France, is a general solution to justify your identity, to provide authentication, and go all the way to digital signature. You need to understand that we have a very simple application that can be used by anyone, whatever your digital support, any smartphone, whether Apple or Android.
On voit bien qu'on a là quelque part un outil.
So we see that we are about to all have a digital tool in our pockets. And we need to really confer a legal value to this tool. But the tool in and of itself is not going to ensure a proper rollout for the different providers. we have to have the legal framework aligned with the wallet, with the different uses of the wallet. And I'm thinking particularly of the banking sector. We still have a lot of diversity within the banking sector in Europe. I'm part of a European group. Depending on the country, depending on the bank, you don't have the same requirements between France, the Netherlands, Germany. In some countries, we have data that are compulsory that are not compulsory in France, for example. And you cannot ask a European wallet to be a banking application. The wallet is not meant to be a banking application, a health service application, a transport application, a loyalty card, which is an example used by the AMTF. It has to provide a number of functionalities that then have to be ventilated and adopted by the different sectors. In the banking sector, for example, we have a directive on payment, on means of payment. It's not just the banking regulations, by the way. We have a wide directive on money laundering that is currently being turned into a legal legislation applicable European-wide. So we need the legal framework to really be aligned with the new tools given to citizens and service providers, public or private. And in order to do so, we need to really coordinate at the highest level and really see how national and European supervisors are working, how they are organized, how they are committed. In the banking sector today, I still don't know which is the supervising authority for IDS2. Is it ANSI? Is it CPEP? Is it another authority? I don't know which authority will be the ultimate supervising authority. Now, the wallets have to be rolled out at the latest on the 24th of December 2026. 24th of December 2026. That's the deadline. And on the 24th of December 2027, all private services will have a legal obligation to accept the digital solution. If we look at the current situation and we look at where we have to be at in 18 months, we have a lot of work to do on the legal framework. We have to have a clearly defined, secured legal framework that will allow the proper implementation. Yes, 18 months, this is what Guy said. Things are moving fast, things are moving forward, but we're really now touching the core of the matter, and there's a lot of work. There will be a lot of things happening in the next 18 months. Now, one of the major tasks, and Olivier will happy with me, it's the list of trusted parties, because each company or each administration relying on the ID in the wallet has to register. And when they register, they will have to declare the purpose of the data they want to collect using the wallet. So it has to be consistent. Yes, Claire, you're right. And I think really if we need to keep up speedy rollout, we need to bear that in mind. Let me use examples from the banking sector, BNP Paribas. It's a European banking sector. We're doing insurance, credit, life insurance. It's not just your daily banking operations. And we are already wondering about the governance that will be adapted in terms of recording our services. If we have to enter each and every entity of BNP Paribas for each and every type of data, what will be the legal national requirement compared to the European legal requirement? So we're really waiting for the second batch of instruction regarding the registration, and I think this should give us some much needed information. But I'm not expecting a miracle. I'm not expecting the first document to really answer all our questions, and I think that in terms of providing a secure legal framework, in terms of making the data reliable, we still have a lot of work to do. Now, really, recording will be done in each and every member state because banking institutions are national. Now, will it be centralized in France? Will all companies need to register on a single entity, or will it be organized per sector? For example, will it be specific for the banking sector? Will they accept or deny some uses? We don't know. Romain? What incidents on a player like DocaPost, for example, providing digital identity? Yes, I share what my colleagues have said about the rules per sector. Really, if we want to see the general adoption of the attributes, we have to decide on a framework. If we want chemists to accept digitalized prescriptions, for example, if we want acceptation of driving licenses, if we want digital diplomas, we have to change our whole system. We need to change our information systems. We need to deploy new technologies. We need to carry out interoperability tests. This is something that is done by the Potential Consortium. We see that those new protocols, those new formats require expert work. So ENTS had a meeting in Warsaw 4 weeks ago of experts, dozens of stakeholders from 17 European countries, if I'm not mistaken. And if memory serves, we're reaching 80% success in terms of interoperability with the best European experts in the room. So we still have some way to go. But if we want tomorrow any entity that is not specialized in data management, if we want any entity to be in a position to give out or receive attributes and identities, they will have to understand the technology, they will have to have the system in place. If you need to change your database, it's massive work. Then checking the data is essential. Archiving the attributes and certifications is also very important. So we will see over time in the field of identity, we will have to slowly integrate the whole ecosystem that we have today for digital signature, making sure that from A to Z, when we do a transaction, we have the full traceability and all the trust certification. So since you were talking about us as a tech provider, we have to help all the members of the ecosystem to go over the technological hurdle and to turn to new ways of doing things. Marianne, Anne-Gaëlle, did you want to say something regarding the continuity and the interoperability? You mentioned the interoperability tested live in Warsaw recently. What seems of the message I'd like to convey this morning is that the tool will only be useful and valuable if the whole ecosystem adopts it. So we're making it technologically possible, really relying on the different stakeholders, Decapod, EN Group, but really the point is to facilitate the uptake above and beyond a small group, the potential group, which is the historical origin of the platform. We need to go above and beyond and really have a buy-in by all members of the ecosystem while fulfilling the many challenges that we have to face within the next 18 months in a legal framework that is not finalized. It's quite a challenge, but the platform really, the platform is meant for you, and you really have to adopt it above and beyond the group of potential.
Yeah, well, if I could pick up on that last point. Since yesterday, in fact, Docker posts to technological solutions are available via that platform. So if you want to test one of our certification services, it's there. It's on the platform. If you want to check and receive certifications which come from other wallets, whatever wallet that is, as long as it's a European standardized fund, you can test that already. You can test it for real, in real conditions. I would like to thank you again for integrating us. Yeah, and other uses which are and other services which are being tested right now, and also the expansion of the ecosystem of the family, if you will. That's the word that's sometimes used. Yeah, absolutely right. It's an open spirit, open-minded pursuit. That's the mission which historically has been our mission. It's been certification, list of trusted users, trusted service providers. Even talking about passports, I think we're all familiar with that. The idea of the certification and authorization process. That's the foundation of everything we do. And we saw that in Utrecht and in Warsaw. We've had real concrete, proper, real life condition testing of this. And I really think now it's time for us to go further. Marie-Lie, a little respect and talk about that. Yeah, actually, it was about 18 months seems like a short amount of time because since there was a lot to do. But I think we've heard from this roundtable discussion today, things are moving fast. How are local authorities, local government responding in France? Well, there's already there's a lot of preparation work that's already been done to make sure that digital identity is possible. For that, there needed to be a plan in place for access to internet connection to begin with. And that's work that's been ongoing for a long time now. We also needed to make sure that there was a suitably thriving industrial ecosystem, and there's a fair number of representatives of that in the room today and here on the stage, which allows us to meet the security requirements, the security challenges, and that took investment. We had to invest about putting in for the necessary technological bricks. We have an industrial strategy, industrial policy in France, which has allowed us to make that possible, and I think we have the infrastructure in place now which makes it possible, which makes us feel pretty confident about the coming 18 months, is that we have that infrastructure, we have the industrial partners in place, we have the ecosystem, we have the stakeholders who are capable of working hand in hand with government to advance towards that goal. Yeah, actually, if I could, I would like to say I really am not worried at all about meeting that deadline, about the implementation of this technology and its functions, and I completely agree that the interoperability tests have shown that it's not complicated. You need to make sure that we're all talking the same language, with the standardized, the standard, but there are 27, aren't there? So we've got to make sure that all of these standards are compatible, that we all understand that we're all on the same page. But, let's be honest, that's true of any digital project, and we'll get there. I'm really not worried about that. We'll make it happen. I think what's of greater concern to me, well, two things actually. I talked about simplification earlier. That's what it needs to be. The French wallet needs to work in the same way as the Italian wallet, and the same way as the Belgian wallet, the Portuguese wallet, and that's not the case right now, because we don't have the same user experiences, depending on some of the construction choices that have been made. Even if we're working to the same norms and standards, the actual construction process has been different. We need a better, greater alignment across the sector. I find it that a lot more difficult. There are more wallets in France and more than there are in the Netherlands. So it's more about
ce qu'on appelait dans un bon français de same level playing field européen.
Having a level playing field across Europe. The technology is not really the issue. It's about aligning and standardizing that technology. I'm not saying that it's easy, but the norms, standards, these are new things. They've not been used. Certainly not in the banking sector. So there is definitely work to be done. But it's going to work. It's going to work.
Homogénéisation dont vous parliez. Oui, juste un mot, Claire, avant.
Oh, sorry, Claire, quickly. Olive, if you could just... I want a question about the homogenization, the uniformization between different sectors and different countries. Are the discussions already underway? I think it's going to be sector by sector, given the complexity of the regulatory framework for each sector, for the banking sector. Yeah, but is that process underway? For banking in France, yes, absolutely, because it's work that's been done by the French Banking Federation, as a digital working group. And also European as well, the EPH, which there's a consultation which is...
anti-monnaie,
revision of the anti-money laundering legislation. There's also work on the payment directives. Yes, there's a lot of work being done, but all of that is being done at a different rate, a different speed in each sector. So we all have a deadline to meet.
est-ce qu'on va réussir
Are we going to all the planets going to line up? The planets going to align with that time? Well, that remains to be seen. But
la possibilité de
that's what's going to determine. It's not. I mean, the willpower is there, the determination is there, but the actual possibility of it. And there's one planet not to forget is the business model.
Alors là, moi, je prends une casquette
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, I say I'm fairly comfortable talking about this. I will say because
relaying party.
I'm a relaying party. I'm a service user. I'm not a wallet provider. I am the relaying party, and so I'm not yet an attestation provider either. So
Voir ce que je dois investir
I'm going to start by looking at what I need to invest, what I need to do to get my house in order. You know, we have to have the digital wallet. You know, that is, you know. And,
pour le concitoyen.
I mean, it's free for citizens to choose whether or not to use it, but for private sector departments who have identification responsibility, we're not allowed to say, oh, I don't really fancy this digital wallet thing, I'm not ready. No. By 24th of December 2026 or 7, we need to be capable of handling absolutely any European digital identity wallet and identifying that with strong identification into our processes. For a bank and also all the other services of identity, I don't think you can perhaps understand that's not something that's going to be done, you know, in the blink of an eye. It's not, even if we've got 2.5 years to work towards that goal, we know it's going to be a challenge. Angel Baudouin, a few words, if you will, about inclusiveness, inclusion, and uptake. How are you going to continue that process of raising awareness and the inclusive adoption and making sure all French citizens are able to engage the digital wallet? Well, it's a really big, broad subject you bring up. As I was saying a little bit earlier, since the start of the France Identity project, the issue of user experience is really been at the center of the way the project has been conducted, and you know, citizens are citizens, putting the user first, user-oriented. That's really determined all the way that the way in which the project has been designed, the choices that have been made about the user functions. It's all done based on what we've observed to be the needs and the expectations of users, and you know, in all modesty as well. You know, we have to admit there's a gulf between what we imagine users want and actually how they take up and use the system. You know, as I mentioned earlier, for example, we didn't expect there to be such a strong demand for digital driver's licenses, but they're much more so than there has been for the ID card. Same with the vehicle registration patterns. You know, we get a lot of stakeholders, a lot of partners saying, "Oh, I don't know, what's the point of digitalizing this?" But then when we actually get out and ask users or potential users, their expectations are not quite what you might have predicted, and they're different from what some of our partners might think. So we're going to continue working in that way, to being attentive and getting feedback from users and passing up their expectations from all channels. We're also working particularly to expand and extend the access, the people who are the number of people and the programs of people who are able and willing to access the wallet and to French identity at the national level, because very often, and this is something that comes up very frequently, is that it's only used by adults who have existing identity cards or have existing bank accounts. So I mean, that's about 25 million people in France who are walking around with the new model of identity cards. I mean, not the old formats that it used to be. So we need to expand that number. Now we need to expand the potential users of digital identities to get to underage and minors and using it. And we mentioned this earlier. It's not necessarily a technological challenge. This is actually poses a certain number of legal issues which need to be properly elucidated, and I'm sure we also be seeking shortly to expand access to French identity to people with other types of identity documents, not just ID cards, perhaps passports. I mean, there are other fields into which we could expand the user base. That's important, and that is now already one of the major objectives for the future of the project. Marie-Liane, do you want to talk a bit more about inclusiveness? And Olivier, you two afterwards, but Marie-Liane, you first. Yes, well, we've already mentioned the collective challenge of people who are poorly engaged with digital services. And I think that is a challenge which France Titre has run up against, and other identity providers too. We don't want this new transition to leave too many of our citizens behind. And this implementation process is also, it's only going to be really possible, it's only going to be successful if we're very attentive to the issue of acceptability. And for that to be true, we need to bear in mind that users don't want things which currently you don't need to verify identity. In the future, we start asking them to digitally verify their identity. That's not the point. The point isn't to add extra layers. It's about to start with existing things, the things that are already identity controlled, and to digitalize those uses. And we need to make that really clear that we're not trying to have that creep of identification. We're not going to have that mission creep of going beyond what's actually necessary in terms of identity verification. Olivier? Yes, that's fundamentally important what you just said. We're not adding extra layers of security where it's not needed, or adding more checks and papers where they're not needed. Absolutely right. That it's not a pretext for locking everything up and making everything identity controlled. We need to bear in mind that you need to be able to use your services directly, face to face. I've already got clients in our banks. They come into a bank, you've got simple things, and you ask them to check their identity. I don't know, you're trying to come out, order a new checkbook or whatever. And they've got France identity, and they come and say, okay, look, here's France identity on my telephone. I don't have my ID card anymore. You can see some people are already really way ahead, and unfortunately, that's not good enough. The bank's not expecting it. Unfortunately, we don't accept that yet. We can't just have France identity on your telephone. That's embarrassing for us sometimes, but it's just explaining if it's simple, people will use it. So simplicity is the key. It's about using it's different. If it's BNP, if such as general, whatever your bank is, or paying your electricity bill, or paying a train ticket, that you should be able to identify yourself simply. The user experience is going to be fluid, it's going to be natural, and only when it's really necessary. And you should be able to do that for in all of the digital realms, or the digital areas, and it should be just as simple as showing your ID card in person. Yeah, actually, there's one point which and you said this we be careful. We mustn't have that mission creep of having current practices where you don't have to show ID. In the future, that we have to start showing digital ID. We've got to be very careful, and this is important for some of the big dominant markets, Google, Microsoft, and Amazon, who don't demand European digital identity wallet. We don't want that because it's not at all justified. We need to be very clear that we have commitments and promises to make sure that they live up to those promises, because those stakeholders would be very interested to be able to enrich their databases to have more information with the user profile that goes behind it. So it really is now for governments at all levels to be very vigilant, and particularly the CNIL in France, the Civil Liberties Authority, to make sure that they check that there is not that overreach. Okay, a few words about European consortia, then, if we may. Could we talk a little bit about the progress being made and the working timetable of the different European consortia? You mentioned about potential, maybe WeBuild. You could talk about that. Roman, I think you know of that. Aptitude is a program that's also been mentioned also. Yes, absolutely. So potential is a product which actually delivered its, it's on the home straight, we might say, because the project is set to wrap up this summer. It's been focused on 6 major user cases. And we've got a number of meetings still to come talking about interoperability. And now we're off for a new round, a new program, a new consortium, which is called Aptitude. That's focused on two major functions and usages: mobility, because one of the objectives, which has been defined at the EU level, defined by the Commission, is the DTC, digital passport, how we can simplify travel, essentially. That's one of the two major functions, and the other, was actually mentioned by Olivier earlier, is authentication, reinforced authentication for transactions, for payments, and a number of challenges which go along with that. Security, fluidity of the user experience, making sure that solutions are valid at European level. The deadline for that is, well, the project is going to be kicking off in Paris in the last quarter of this year, and it will run for 2 years. Romain, perhaps you could say a little bit about Weebit. Yeah, of course. WeBuild is another consortium which will be kicking off in September of this year, which will also run for 2 years. And the objective is similar actually as the other. It's about delivering deliverables on real concrete innovations by the end of its 2 years run. WeBuild is about identifying legal persons. Different user scenarios, recognizing suppliers, recognizing clients, people acting on behalf of companies, people with the right to sign documents on behalf of companies, and of course payments. There's several interesting points. There was the capacity for experimentation. We're building with a professional identity wallet, which is a concept which is similar to the natural person, your digital identity, personal identity, but the idea of a professional identity wallet is to test the whole value chain, from archiving to document signing, having all these integrated systems which are capable of responding to satisfying all those functions, and also proof of age as well. Proof of age was kind of seemed to have been dropped out of view for a little bit because of concerns over confidentiality. But WeBuild will be focusing on that for reasons of payment. We've launched WeBuild Connect as a platform as watched recently. That's about proving age, proving that people are adults, and that's hopefully something that the consortium, which will be able to see if they can find the crossover between that age verification system and the payment verification system. Olivier, you wanted to say a few words about European consortia? Yes, well, we're actually a partner with Potential, and we're now in what we might call the landing stage. We're in the testing and piloting phase now. Things are going pretty well. So I will insist on saying that things are going well. But it's true that this wave of consortia that we've seen, Ennomid, NWC, MVC4U, all of these projects, they've been hemmed in a little bit by the publication of the regulations, or they're awaiting the publication of those regulations. So this first wave, this is the first consortia, they've been focused, it's kind of been sandbox work. They've been focused on the conceptual side of things. And now we're moving into a phase where what we've seen, a lot of solutions that have been proven, a lot of user scenarios, relational interactions have been demonstrated. That now the work is going to be we've already volunteered to be a member of Aptitude, with other French banks too. We'll see who gets confirmed. But the idea then is to move further, keep moving forward with an approach which is more of an operational piloting, moving into the operational delivery phase, and with a particular focus on strong authentication for secure payments, which is very specific. It's a very specific world, the payment sector, and we'll have to be very careful to get that right, because European digital identity wallets, they're not payment wallets, essentially. They're not banking applications. So obviously there's a question which is also something which is similar to WeBuild, where we're talking about building slightly more complex payment platforms, which are incorporating age verification, for example. There could be other types of verification which might be required. In any case, we're very enthusiastic about the potential of continuing this project with Aptitude. Thank you, and we'll talk a little bit in more detail about that this afternoon. You wanted to say a few words, Angel? Yes, actually, I just wanted to take up a point which has been mentioned to respond a little bit to what Olivier said. Above and beyond the challenge, the operational challenges, and I agree with Olivier that the closer we get to the deadline of November 2026, the more pressing the need becomes to deliver a real operational, usable solution. But it's also an opportunity, and we've always thought of it as this. It's an opportunity for the ecosystem as a whole in France, the whole French ecosystem, to work very closely in parallel with choices, decisions that are being made across the whole broader community. And obviously, from that perspective, you mentioned with Playground, the whole ecosystem, the whole needs to work together on this, for making sure that we reflect the expectations and preoccupations of users and future users, and planning ahead for what's going to happen very soon. Yes, and these are subjects which we will talk about in greater detail at 4:30 this afternoon. So I'll see you back here at 4:30. I think there's time to take some questions from the room, if there are any. I'm sure there will be. So if you'd like to raise your hand, and the man will come around with a microphone. I can see a question over here on the right. The microphone there, please. Please introduce yourself to begin with. Give us your name. Hello, Nathalie Lenay, Club Pasteria. A question about attestations. Currently, the regulation ADAS 2 does not require the data verification for purity data governance. This was in the most recent V8 of the Friend for Work architecture that was published on 27th of March, just last week. Only attestations, electronic attestation suppliers or qualified attestation suppliers will need to have these data divulgation policies integrated in their metadata, so that users store them in their wallet, and then their digital wallet is used for verification on demand. My question then is this going to be incorporated in the French amendment, which is to have these attestations included in the legislation? And my second question is it the idea for the wallet to be used to directly verify the compliance between in the relation between the service supplier and the anti-data divulgation measures which must be included under the regulation? Who wants to answer that one? I mean, the first question I think is for you. I don't know. Can I call a friend? Is there anybody in the room? No, I'm sorry. I'm actually really going to ask someone. I think someone in the room here is willing to answer that one. Is that right? Angel, sorry. I've heard that you can't call a friend this time. You're going to have to field that one yourself. Maybe another question that will come to me. The answer might come to me. Oh, there's a gentleman. Gentleman, oh, you already have a microphone too. Jean Figuiol from Lumines, creator of the Trust Me solution in partnership with A3BC, available on France Connect, and we're hoping to be on France Connect Plus soon. And the question we're asking, which is France Connect Plus isn't out yet, supposed to be available in the coming days. What about the economic model? How is France Connect going to banks, different institutions, structures are going to have to, they've been able to invest. What about the consumption of these digital identity? What about private sector actors who are involved in this ecosystem, who are investing in it? When is this economic model going to be clear, or do you have a clearer idea of what the economic model of France Connect Plus is going to be, so we can know exactly what we're heading into and for our clients? I'll answer to say that I can't really give you a very clear answer to that one, I'm afraid. The people who can answer that aren't here, but I'm sure you'll be able to find some of them knocking around here at FIC today if you want to ask the people who know the answer to that. There is actually an interministerial meeting which will decide officially that issue. That's next week. So after that interministerial meeting next week, that hopefully the broad governing principles of how the suppliers, the financial model for identity suppliers on France Connect Plus, how that's going to work. Hopefully that question will be definitively settled after that meeting next week. So there's a beginning of an answer next week. gentleman over here. Hello, Pierre Oli, Vice President for the University of Lille for Digital Matters. We are a stakeholder with DockerPost for another European consortium, which is called EpiVector, that hasn't been mentioned. We have a meeting tomorrow, actually, in Bruges, focusing on higher education and digital wallets, particularly certificates of degree certificates and fighting against fraud in qualifications and degree certificates. So in the roadmap that France Identity has, France Titre, your agency, when will higher education things, we're talking about degrees, printouts, student ID cards, when will that be included? We're doing localized experiments at the moment. When will we be able to be part of the broader, bigger national system? Well, we'd love to have you. We'd love to have all degree certificates and student ID cards, particularly student ID cards, to have that included in the digital wallet. But as I said a little bit earlier, in the plans for the future, the coming objectives for France Identity, there's an essential objective which is the thread that's running through today's discussions, which is about having a wallet which is compatible EU-wide. Obviously, we'd love to be able to make France Identity accessible to a broader public of users, not just people with ID cards, and expand it to include expand that wallet to include not just your vehicle documents, your driving cards. To have student cards on there, that could definitely be an option. Once again, I'm sorry if I'm seem like I'm avoiding the question, but there are discussions which are ongoing at the interministerial level to decide really what the priorities will be, how we're going to prioritize which documents will be next to be included. Again, it's a matter of simplification, simplifying the user experience, and keeping costs down potentially also, because if we start printing fewer cards, there's a way of saving a bit of money too. So yes, student cards are definitely on the list. It's one of the options that's been proposed. It's on the table, but I can't promise you exactly when that will happen. Thank you very much. There was a question over here. I think you have a microphone. Yes. Yes, hello, Michel Diano from the Tony Blair Institute. Thank you for this insight. My question is for Madame Prefect, Madame Baudouin. Is this France Identity application, because it's an application which is gradually expanding to include new forms of new attestations, the Vitel, the health services card, that's very good for fighting against fraud, the vehicle documentation, I think that's pretty good for particularly for low emissions vehicles. I think that's going to be very useful to give you the right to use to drive your car all over Europe. Will France Identity ultimately become a digital portfolio, digital wallet, or is simply an interface which will allow market stakeholders to propose digital wallet services, different types of digital wallet service? So if Apple Wallet, for example, were to become approved by or the European Digital Identity Wallet. That's one question. Is France Identity intending to become a wallet in its own right, or not, or simply a portal giving access to you're calling it a platform at the moment, an interoperability platform? Well, our vision of the matter is, and this was mentioned earlier, France Identity is intended to become the French government-backed digital wallet, yes, which will meet the European standards and norms. So yes, that is indeed our goal. That's the road we're on. We're trying to, again, part of the work we're doing with the EU consortium, we're there in it's particularly important that we are present in that consortium. We're talking about the potential links with Apple Wallet as an example. That's That's a very important subject, of structural importance, I'd say. But from our perspective, front identity, we think that's our sovereign government-backed solution. We don't want to have our French ID cards in Apple Wallet. That's out of the question. We think that seems to us obvious. But not all member states, for example, there are different opinions on that. It's a subject which has been discussed a lot, depending on the legal and political setup and conditions of different member states. This is one of the points which has been a subject of much discussion, even if in France, thus far, there's not really much a subject for debate. And I think that's a good thing. However, there are probably, and again, this is the subject, and you see there's a long list of subjects and topics that are currently up for discussion. How can we use the identity verification tools that we have? How can we make our identity verification system available to users who are regularly using Apple Wallet, for example? I don't know, when they take the airplane, for example, they have their tickets on their Apple Wallet and they need to prove their identity. Can we make the functionalities available? We don't want our ID card to be stored in the Apple Wallet. That we're very clear about that. But how could we possibly form a connection, and we can make our identity verification tools available to users? That interoperability is a subject which is something that needs to be discussed. Discussions are ongoing, but for that to be possible, the portfolio, the digital wallet needs to exist. Needs to be real. If we don't have the tools, then nothing's possible. But we need to bear in mind that clear commitment we have to sovereignty, and we need to make sure we're in line with reality, with the concrete uses that people make of these digital wallet tools. Well, thank you very much for your questions. Thank you for the answers. Thank you to everybody, for all in the panel, for sharing your perspectives, your expertise, to give us a better, clear idea of the current state of affairs. And you've raised a number of topics and other subjects which are going to come back over the course of the day, and of course over the next 18 months here in Europe. And we will be back to talk more about that a year from now. And we'll be here. Interesting to have an update, and I'm sure we'll see each other before then too, to continue to track the evolution of this digital subject, the acceleration of uptake of digital wallets in France and across Europe. That's the end of our first session. We're going to take a 15-minute break, and my colleagues will be back with a new panel of experts to talk about user experiences and the use of digital wallets back here, and I'll be back later in the day, particularly at 4:30, to continue talking about digital identity. Enjoy the rest of the morning and the rest of the day. Thank you.